Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the Student's Opinion. Today, we are here for the 14th episode and we will be discussing student government. Here on our podcast, Medhaansh and I are frequently disseminating topics related to education and student life. We also make calls to action and present our thoughts on how some aspects of education could be changed. The same happens in student governments in schools around the world, where elected students work with school staff to provide enriching opportunities to all students. Medhaansh, you have been heavily involved in student governments throughout your time at school. So, could you give us some insights into how the entire organization works?
Hey everyone. As Vineet said, I'm heavily involved in student government, especially right now at the United World College Maastricht. I'm a PC rep. PC stands for Participation Council. It's a council mandated by the Dutch government where you sit alongside with staff and the leadership team and discuss about various issues on how you're going to tackle over the next couple of years. That also includes financing as well. However, PC is not exactly a single role that is mandated to the student council. We call it student council here. In different places it's also called student government. I can remember back in my old school at SJBHS, we had four houses, and over there we had captains and vice captains for each house. Similarly, when it came to the other school that I came before coming to UWC, that was Cameron's, we had the concept of prefects, if I'm not wrong, Vineet, in 11th and 12th. And then at UWC, we have something much more prominently present called the student council. Over here, there's no degrees or ranks in which you serve. It's more related to your portfolio. So we have four portfolios: an academic portfolio, a community life portfolio, a student life portfolio, and then comes the participation council representatives. I represent in the student council as a capacity as a PC representative in the year 12 and 13. I represent all my stakeholders, whether it be from the MIPs to year 12 and 13. Me and another representative, Alejo, that's what we do. We sit in the council and then we discuss it out about different stuff that's on the agenda. So yeah, that's a brief explanation of how the entire organization works, to be honest. Yeah, if I had to really explain of the entire thing, that would take ages.
Yeah, well, I am, for one, really curious to hear about how the entire organization works. So I think we'll get to that. But I think first we should just talk about student government in general and its benefits. Now, if I understand correctly, different schools in different countries, they have different ways of implementing this idea of student government where students are taking up responsibilities in the running of the school. So in India, like you said, in our schools, we used to have different houses, which was a way of dividing children up, sort of like how the houses are at Hogwarts in Harry Potter. So we would have different houses, and each house would be led by a captain and a vice captain. And there would be a head of the whole school, which would be the head boy and the head girl. So they would all be responsible for in the student government. And in India, primarily the job of these houses leads and the head boy and head girl were to facilitate extracurricular activities and excite students up and provide them with opportunities to display their co-curricular activities and activities outside of academics. Now, I'm pretty sure that's different in Netherlands, but I would also like to say how it is here in the United States. So at least in my school, we have an assistant student body, ASB, as it's called, and they are responsible for hosting events, cultural events, hosting games with teachers and students, and several other such activities to create this sense of togetherness among all students. And another thing that's different here is that in the United States, in our schools, we do not have the sorts of houses that we had in India. So the competition now is between the different classes. So in high school, you have ninth graders competing against 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. And it's not like they're playing sports or something. It's like cheering for your class, participating in spirit days where you dress up in certain colored dresses to show your support for different cultural events, organizing memorial days. So those are the sort of activities that we student government here are doing, which is kind of similar but really different from what happens in India. And based on what you're saying about student government in the Netherlands, I'm pretty sure it's completely different there, with you guys getting a lot more responsibility in the running of the school.
Yeah, I quite agree. In fact, I was quite interested when you brought up the United States as well, because I have a couple of friends who I met on the process of the Erasmus project. So I met UWC Adriatic, which is in Italy. I met schools from Slovenia, and some non UWC affiliated schools as well, such as the British School of Milan, which was quite interesting to see because they have a different form of student government itself. They have representatives of, since it's more of a residential covering that they do in which is quite different to what UWC Maastricht is, or it's completely day students. So it depends on really what institution or which country you have currently existing or living at. Because at that point the councils change depending upon the pre-existing conditions as well. Because the same thing at UWC Robert Bosch, there's a separate form of student government. Adriatic, there's a separate form of student government. Atlantic has a student council, which is based in the United Kingdom. So yeah, I quite agree with the fact as well.
Yes, so now we have gotten that general discussion of different student governments out of the way. How about you tell us a few benefits of being part of student government before we delve into the student government in Netherlands?
I just remember, I think there are a lot of benefits in participating in student council, and some of them being you develop a lot of leadership skills, since technically you're in a leadership role, so you learn how to work effectively with your peers to achieve common goals. You build communication skills, since members from Stuco regularly communicate with school administrators, teachers, and fellow students, which help them to improve communication skills. Now, one of the most important things the benefits that helps in participating in student council is that you gain experience in decision making, because on certain time, and I've seen it happen sometimes inside of student councils as well, that we have to take certain decisions which have equal amount of pros as well as the equal amount of cons. So at that point of time, you really it while making a lot of decisions, that helps you gain experience in decision making, and also helps in critical thinking as well. uh, as I said before, it you do make a positive impact to the school community, because you address student concerns and advocate for student needs. Essentially, you give back to the community that you really love and like so much. You develop teamwork skills, since we often work in teams to plan events and address student issues. They also which can help them develop valuable teamwork skills, improving public speaking skills. So essentially, when you go to a large group of people, my year group essentially is around 210 students. Together, the entire school's population is more than 2000. So yeah, it definitely helps you give a confidence to speak in large groups, and that helps your public speaking skills, especially when it comes to election as well. And you also have a sense of building a community, since you work to promote the school spirit and create a positive school culture. It can also help build a sense of community among students. So yeah, I think those are some of the benefits that come to my mind. What about you?
Yeah, well, I haven't really been part of any student government. I just didn't find that I was suited for the role, and I wasn't really interested in the role either, because it's mostly organizing events, and I felt I could use my time better in other interests that I had. So it's not like I'm against student government. It's just that uh, I'm not as passionate about it as, say, you are. So I if I was speaking out of principle, I would say yes, student government does help students gain that experience in participating in the political process, which is important going forward in a highly globalized world where we have to have our opinions heard and our voices heard if we want to bring about change that we want. So, in that sense, I can see how student government is really beneficial to students. But then for me in particular, I wasn't that interested. So, I don't have much more to add than you do because you're the one who has the experience here.
Well, yeah, so basically from my end, that's some of the basic skills. Still, you get a ton of like, you also get to work with members who you might not have worked with or you might not share class with. So it's also a good bonding. Um, uh, it essentially bonds you a lot among the members.
Yes, I can understand that because I myself have been part of teams, and when you work closely with other people, you do grow like really strong bonds with each other. So I can understand that aspect for sure. And yeah, student government does help you come up with ideas to solve problems. And those are the sort of ideas you don't really train in normal classes. So it's an extracurricular activity that helps students who are particularly interested in entering the arena of politics or just in general who are interested in leadership develop the necessary skills to be successful at their craft. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, yes, I think that does give you a stepping stone into if you do want to go into, like, say, in leadership positions in the future. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a civil or a public post as well. That does help, however. But when it comes to leadership positions, student council essentially gives you a clear idea. It helps you to work with a lot of people. It also helps you to work with people who your ideologies do not agree with. So it helps you to be tolerant in nature, to hear other opinions and other insights that you might not have considered. So yes, I do agree with you.
Cool. So then let's move the conversation forward to a specific student government, and that is the student government at UWC Maastricht in the Netherlands. So you have been there and you've been participating in the participation council. I know that sounds funny to say, but yeah, so you've been elected to the role. So first, talk us through how you went from going to the Netherlands in 12th grade, starting off there, and then getting into the leadership position that you have now, like the election, what you had to do, because you went there at a really odd time, I guess, since it's the start of your 12th grade. And usually a lot of students have already been there for a year. So you were one of the people who joined in the middle of the high school experience. So how did you like garner the support that you needed to go and end up winning the election to get your spot in the participation council?
Well, that's not exactly correct, Vineet. So basically, what happens is that UWC as an institution starts at around September, and since it's basically an IB diploma program, we had students from all across the world coming to our institution for the first time. So I was as brand new to this UWC and every UWC Maastricht as I think 98% of it. The rest 2% have been studying in the school from the MYP onwards. So basically, it's year 12 and 13. So I'm right now currently year 12, and in a couple of months, I'll be in my final year 13. So yeah, I didn't go in exactly a very odd time, but what I did personally was that I really wanted to mix and mingle with a lot of people, wanted to gain different insights, their experiences from across the world. So yeah, that's basically what the UWC was. So when it came to participation council, so to anyone who's listening to this podcast from UWC Maastricht, they're going to be taken back to the couple of months of seeing my pictures in the televisions all across the school. I knew that I wanted to join a council where I could be the most effective at. And one of the first councils that I was exposed to was the Participation Council. Now, I saw the level of discussions that were happening, and I'm like, okay, that's where I want to work at. So, approximately around January or February, if I'm not wrong, there was this entire, promoting phase. So essentially, just like it happens in every other elections, you can see that as well, say in staying at the states as well right now, considering there's going to be an election for the new president, and even in India. There's a lot of campaign posters on the screens, a lot of social media campaigning. We had to write out an entire application in the first place, and that application was read by the entire community. And so that went on. I also used a word of mouth process to make sure that people knew about me and what I was standing for. So yeah, that was basically my strategy. And then came a public forum discussion, just like the one that happens in the states, where it's essentially more of a debate of types, the presidential debate that happens. So I remember around 5 to 6 representatives were sitting together in the atrium, and we were discussing about the various questions that were thrown out, and even individual questions were given to us on the basis of our application. So yeah, it's a very rigorous you thing that you go through. However, what I know from some other experiences of other students as well is that there is an entire check that goes across. Like, this was a more relaxed environment in which we got into the councils, but in other schools which I know, there's huge amounts of background checks. There's exceptional, finese in which the student is put through, like this, that. So yeah, that's essentially how I got nominated to the Participation Council. And essentially, a large number of people believe at campuses that the Participation Council isn't really effective, while I beg to differ to that, to be honest, because I think it's a very powerful council where you can sit with your staff and your leadership, and look them into the eye and say that no, I disagree with you, sir or ma'am. So yeah, I think that's my point of view from the Participation Council.
That seems very hectic. So it looks like you are ready to run for government positions now with that experience you had running for Participation Council. So you did get elected, and if I'm not wrong, you had a landslide victory. So that got you the seat in the Participation Council. And what about after that? How did you go about your duties At the beginning, because you were new still, and I'm pretty sure the processes and the way the student government worked in the Netherlands was different from anything you had experienced in India. So how did you adapt to all of that and hit the ground running, and became a successful representative of your students?
Well, I think what basically it was is that I'd been to one of the PC meetings, as I said before, as a silent observer. But when I came to my first meeting, I remember my our senior representatives. It was me, Alejo, and also the two representatives that were going to leave, Maripaz and Dora. They also were present over there, and we saw them discussing about a topic that we were trying to pass in the Participation Council for a long time. And in fact, that's what me and Alejo are working towards as well, is installing better menstrual products into the washrooms at our school. So yeah, so that's what essentially it was. At first, I won't lie, it was a bit, you know, overwhelming, because like bam, that everything's going on, agenda. But then we had a kind of training where we understood what essentially we had to do about it. We learned to get to know about our rights, and yes, about we do have the power to give consent or to power to withhold something based on whether we feel that it's not rather justified or we need rather evidence. So as I said, it is a powerful position. Um, I think we adapted quite quickly, and I even took up the role as the secretary for the Joint Participation Council, where it is both the primary participation council and secondary participation council come together, and you know, I took up the secretarial jobs on that basis. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. It was definitely some more added meetings. I had to devote a little bit more of time. I stayed at campus. I think most of the time it's still 7:30, 8:30. Yeah, that's how late it goes on to. So yeah, I hope that answers what you're looking for, basically.
That's nice. So you did find it hard to get used to it, and it did take you time, which I think is expected, especially in sorts of high pressure leadership positions that come with student government and government in general. So I think with this experience, you're able to sympathize more with lawmakers and government officials about the job that they have to do. And you can understand why it does take quite a while to get things done, right?
Well, yes, the it does create a sense of empathy would be good word to explain, but and at the same time, however, it really depends on which government you're talking about. Again, we need while most government over here we as a council, if you know how to delegate responsibilities, keep aside your own for a better lack of word, ego aside, and work together. I think we have done a lot of stuff in a significant amount of time. Sometimes it is difficult, especially when you're working with when you're working with school administrators, because sometimes you just don't want to hear a no as a well, a representative. But as what our head of college tells as well, sometimes an answer can be a no. It might not be a very good answer, but that's an answer as well. So it has been challenging, and yes, I think I do have a sense of empathy for representatives in the government. I do realize it's a huge task over here. We are managing a very a good population when it comes to running a country. It's a completely separate deal altogether.
Yes, that is very true. So now let's also discuss some of the projects you have been involved in, if you can share and divulge some of the details of them. So we have had a rather erratic schedule here on the podcast, and part of the reason has been your hectic life with student council. So probably enlighten our listeners about the projects that you have taken up and how it's eating into your time.
Yes, so everyone, I apologize a lot. I do know uploading session has been erratic, and that's 98.8% my fault. The last percentage is Vineet. Just kidding. So yeah, basically, what I have been doing, along with my representatives in the participation council, is essentially making our school better. Even in the student council as well. Uh, while a certain degree of stuff I cannot discuss over here on the podcast, because that kind of the things are still in plan, and if I do mention it, it would not essentially work out the way we have thought about it. So basically, I think what we've taken up some of the projects is that we have collaborated with an organization. So over here we have student-led organizations as well, which is one of them is called Project Red, which ensures to promote and provide better menstrual care in our washrooms, in the women washrooms, because it is a basic human need. And it was lacking in our school for a significant long time, which was a bit sad. But I'm really happy that we have been able to do that. Right now, we are looking at better installations. We work with various outside organizations as well. Aside from that, we have been looking to get. We have been working alongside with the junior, as in the MYP, middle year program student council as well. So they have a different student council over there. So we have been looking at improvements of how the student distribution can be made, especially in the Mensa, where the year 12 and 13 student residential student seat. Uh, and yes, then there's a coffee machine which was installed by the previous Tuco, and I'm in charge of that. Every time it goes out of order, I essentially have to badger the company so that they can get back to us and make sure that it gets repaired. So yeah, I think those are couple of product projects that I think have already been completed and are on the process. So, but yeah, I think that's pretty much some of it. I obviously, as I said, I can't discuss everything as I want in this podcast as well because but yeah, I hope that helps. But I do promise any UWC Maastricht student listening to this podcast, we are working on much more things as well. We promise you. These are just some of the projects that we've been doing right now.
So it's been nice to see that you have been involved in all of this in just the past 1 2 months. So really curious to see what you guys will be able to accomplish in the rest of your term. And also, before we sort of conclude the podcast, I wanted to ask you about some of the opportunities you've had through student government. So you were telling me how you got to go to the EU Parliament and talk to lawmakers from Europe. So could you talk about some of these other opportunities being in participation council and student government has opened up for you?
The opportunity to go to the EU Parliament was didn't essentially come from student council essentially, or even participation council. It essentially came as an opportunity provided to by UWC Adriatic to our Model UN club where I'm the head of media. So basically, that's how we got to get to meet other representatives. But what's interesting is that how this essentially helped me is because went to Brussels in Belgium with my other co-PC participation council representative Alejo, Aiden, and Valerio. It was the four of us from UWC Maastricht alongside with our teacher Garrett. So we went over there and we met a lot. We discussed about a lot of things, and what essentially I took away from that is that I saw that okay, that's essentially what we are doing as well. We are working on a very tight schedule. We are also answerable to our stakeholders, that is to our students as well. So it was a quite enriching experience because not only did I get to meet students from schools that you technically wouldn't be able to meet unless and until you're traveling to that school or staying in that school. Like as I mentioned, UWC Adriatic, UWC Robert Bosch College, British School of Milan, another school from Slovenia. So yeah, I think I was able to, thanks to the Erasmus project, I was able to go into the EU Parliament. I had discussions about the Ukrainian refugee crisis that's occurring at this point, as well as the education implementation of in the European Union. I I was able to go to NATO, where I had a rather interesting discussion where I heard about what exactly NATO does, which essentially brought out the situation of how do you handle crisis, how do you handle situations where an organization like NATO, which works with more than like which has a huge collaboration and then works with other countries as well, who are not a part of NATO. So it essentially brought the improve my understanding of how I can be a better representative to put out my points ahead, but at the same time respect the other person who's sitting opposite to me and hear his points out, even if I may not be in full agreement with them. So yeah, this opportunity was amazing. It was excellent, and since I will be continuing this project, we'll be going to some other European capital city and having another discussion with new lawmakers of that particular region. So yeah, I'm quite excited for that as well.
And all these discussions with lawmakers would have helped you get an insight into how lawmaking actually works. So that would have helped you with governing the school as well, I would assume.
Well, yeah, it technically does help. Perhaps it may not help directly. I mean, we don't have to essentially implement something for, say, how do you implement refugees, or how do you tackle the Syrian refugee crisis from 2015? That's not something as an institution, in the institution that I'm in, we'll be directly tackling with. But on the other hand, it does provide you with the skills and the skill set essentially to assert, provide help. That's what essentially, when you do become a representative, when you become a leader, that's what you do. You ask the question, how can I help? So that, it's not a trick question either. It's essentially so that you don't know what the school needs, what the organization needs, and how you can help them out.
Yeah, that's cool. So, um, before we conclude now, do you have any final words to say about student government? And based on your experience, would you recommend it to other people? Would you say it depends on the sort of person you are, or would you say stay away from it? I think that wouldn't be the final option, but yeah, any final thoughts before we conclude?
Well, when it comes to student government, you don't essentially need a skill set if you do care about the community that you are in, and you do say that, okay, I love this community, I want to make improvements or some changes that I feel could make it even more better. I mean, that's how I look at it, from that perspective. In fact, one of my main clauses on which I based my election was that we need to work not only for the present UW students, but also work for a better future for the next generation of change makers who will be studying at UWC Maastricht. That was one of the key phrases that I remember from my campaigning time back at the council, back for the in the presidential debate. So yeah, if you really love your campus, and it doesn't really matter upon your what kind of personality you have. You might be an extrovert, introvert, ambivert. It really doesn't matter, as long as you feel that you can put your points across, or you want your to be in a position to make certain decisions that could help in the improvement of the school. I mean, that's all you need, uh, and you learn the rest of it on the way. So yeah, I think I it really, as you said as well, you felt that it wasn't the best experience, or the best portfolio for you for doing it, beneath that you suggested for regarding the student government back in the United States. uh, for me, however, the student government essentially helped me realize, okay, so now I'm doing something that really helps my peers. That really, it is time consuming, I will not lie. If you get into student government, be prepared to be up for some good discussions for a good couple of hours, especially when it comes to planning, strategizing. And yeah, I think personally, since I am at an institution that's a United World College, I think those skills are instilled within literally each and every class or activity I do. And me, as an individual, I'm literally present on every other activity that the school does. I was present for an open forum, alongside with my student council representatives, as well as the MYP student representatives, discussing and asking questions to the executive director of UWC, who's all the way from London, Faith Abiodun. And yeah, that was a really interesting experience for it as well. So Yeah, it does help you to grow a sense of empathy. It does want you to help. And to anyone who's running for student government or councils for after this, just remember the key phrase, how can I help? When you put out the phrase, that's how you know that you can help this the institution, the organization that you are, to make it much more better. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So to whoever's running for elections at student governments and councils across the world, all the very best. You got this. Just keep a cool mind and have faith in yourself. You'll get selected. And all those who are in present student councils as well, I hope that your organizations run very smoothly and effectively, so that you can make most of your experience out from it as well. A very good positive experience.
Thank you so much, Medhaansh, for your thoughts and insights. It's been a pleasure listening to your eclectic experiences in the student government and the advice you have for all students who are interested in running for student government and positions of leadership at school to make a positive change. So I'm sure you have inspired our listeners who are not even considering this to now probably run for leadership positions. And hopefully, we students can use our voice to drive necessary change in tomorrow's world. And on that note, guys, we conclude our 14th episode here on The Student's Opinion. This episode will be exclusively available on Spotify for the first 2 days, after which it will be available on YouTube, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified when future episodes drop, and comment on what you thought of this episode. If you have any suggestions, be sure to email us at contact.thestudentsopinion@gmail.com. And for now, it is Medhaansh and I, signing off.